Hello, everyone. My name is Manuel, and I'm talking from Brazil. It's a big pleasure to me to speak at the Scrum Day, Ecuador. I hope you enjoy the message that I have to you today. And today, we're going to talk about Learn 3.0. Then, let's start by the beginning. All right. Probably the most important thing about Learn 3.0 is to understand the motivation behind the concept. The motivation behind the Learn 3.0 is if you look, for example, at a traditional classroom, probably you will recognize a kind of pattern. Which pattern I talk about? Probably you'll see a kind of pyramid. It's a strong pyramid, to be honest. But why it's important? It's important because this pyramid is very similar as a traditional pyramid present at the organization, for example. In this case, have the famous separation between the thinkers and the doers. The thinkers, most of the time, take a kind of centralizing decisions about what and how to do something. And the doers just do it, right? In our organization, for example, we have the managers make the centralized decisions and the doers just follow this structure. It's a very simple model, to be honest. But the similar situation, the similar behavior we have at the educational model. We have the teacher and we have the students. The teachers take the centralized decisions about what and how to learn something, right? And the students just receive the structure, the knowledge, basically. In this case, the teacher is a kind of expert. Actually, he is the responsible to teaching the student. To be honest, most of the time, he is the only responsible to do that, right? But the real problem of this model is the prescriptive behavior. The teacher, most of the time, work on the prescriptive answers, and the students just repeat these answers. Look that this model is based on repetition, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. Similar a factor, similar, for example, if you are building car most of the time, right? But of course, we need to rethink about this model. We can call it as Learning 1.0. In the Learning 1.0, we are a kind of knowledge receiver. In this case, as knowledge receivers, we depend on some expert or some institution to decide about what and how I need to learn something. Note that in this model, we have relationships based on a kind of one-to-many model. Why one-to-many? Because we have one teacher designed to many students, right? In this case, the teacher, for example, decides about what and how the student must learn something, for example. All right. In the Learning 1.0, basically, we have a teacher acting as an expert. The expert provides, for example, this image, the expert is transferring their knowledge to the student, right? It's important because if you, for example, we summarize the Learning 1.0 model, you can define that the expert define question in the answer. Just it. It's a good summary for the Learning 1.0 model, right? Okay. But you also have a kind of transitional model. This model is called as Learning 2.0. In the Learning 2.0, basically, you have a better interaction between the specialist, between the expert, for example, and the student, right? Uh, then you can understand that you already have some element of the emergent learning, okay? But the major part of the learning 2.0 is the same model that the learning 1.0. For example, in the learning 2.0, we're still having the one-to-many model, right? For example, we still have the teacher decide about what the learner must learn, okay? But of course, there is more interaction in this scenario. For example, we can summarize that the learning can define the question, but the expert still defines the answer. Then it summarizes what the learning 2.0 is. All right, but why we need to rethink about these models? Basically, you need to rethink about it because for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. Or in other words, basically, you must recognize the complex system. And what's this type of discussion is important for by a learning perspective? It's important because the learning 1.0, for example, is strongly based on the obvious system. And some obvious system is based on prescription and repetition model, right? Of course, this system is important for several types of case, but if you recognize that we are living in a different age of the knowledge workers, for example, then you recognize that, but at the time we are in the complex system, and at the complex system, a complex system is based on uncertainty and singularity. Then it's basically it's impossible to prescriptive some solution for some problem, for example, right? Then that's the main idea behind the learning 3.0, right? The learn 3.0. We don't have anymore the power of the institutions or the experts. The learning is no longer determined by the expert. Actually, the learning emerged from the people, emerged from the real world also, right? And of course, the learning 3.0 um, provoke, create a kind of environment to include all perspective during the learning process, right? You can understand, for example, that the Learn 3.0 recognize that we need to work in an end-to-end model or in a many-to-many relationship. In this case, for example, the many-to-many model recognizes that everyone can learn from everyone, right? That's the gist of the Learn 3.0, right? The main idea is that everyone can learn from everyone, right? Okay, um, then we can summarize that in the Learning 1.0, we have the expert who define the question and the answer. And in the Learn 2.0, we still have the expert, but there is more interaction between the expert and the student. But the final answer still depends on the expert, right? And in the Learn 3.0, the learners define both questions and the answer, right? That's the main idea, the main difference among this model, basically. But before we keep forward, I have a mission for you, right? I would like to ask to you to self-organize in pair and discuss what you think about this concept. Are you agree with this concept? In your recent experience, what's the difference between the 1.0 and the 3.0, for example? Okay, please, you have 5 minutes, discuss about it, and later on, we keep going in this lecture. Bye. It's important to note that it is about the difference between prescriptive approach and the emergent approach, especially because you start to recognize that the learning arises from the interaction between a number of people, right? In this case, for example, the result of the learning is unpredictable, right? It's the very important stuff to remember, right? Remember the uncertainty, right? It's very related with the complex system. Learning 3.0 also is based on a lot of dialogue, multiple perspective, and the Learning 3.0 recognize that everyone is equal during the learning process. It's important because if you take a look of the complex theory, you understand that in the complex system, every single element is the cause and the effect at the same time. And of course, by a learning perspective, the Learning 3.0 recognizes that every single participant is the creator and the receiver at the same time, right? And you can understand that in the Learning on 1.0, the expert is the responsible of the teaching of the teaching process, and the Learning 3.0, everyone are responsible of the learning process. Notice that in this case, you change the perspective, right? In the 1.0, the main perspective is by the teacher, right? The Learning 3.0, we change the point of view. We start to work as a learner, at the point of view as a learner. Then it's very important to understand how we learning, how my brain learning basically, right? That's the main point of the Learning 3.0 basically. Notice that it's about autonomy. Learning 3.0 fostering the autonomy during the learning process. If you remember, for example, the famous word from Dumping, autonomy is one of the powerful intrinsic motivators from the knowledge workers, for example. All right, but by this moment, you are thinking, hey Manuel, I really love this theory, but how can I put it in practice? All right, I'll help you, okay? I'll explain to you a little bit about the Learning 3.0 system, okay? But it's very important to understand that this system works as a kind of bricks. Actually, there is a compounded by a lot of bricks, right? But why bricks? Why it's so important for me? Probably you are thinking. Because as a Lego, for example, you can build what you want, how you want, and when you want, right? There is no prescription about how you can put in practice the Learning 3.0. But at the time, you just have a couple of principles, a couple of ideas, right, to help you to start the Learn 3.0 experience, right? Then let's take a look of the Learn 3.0 system. That's the Learn 3.0 system. Notice that the Learn 3.0 system is based on theory, principles, and flow. I will explain these items a little bit later on. And of course, we also have some ideas, that ideas based on some tools, on some techniques to help us during the Learning 3.0 experience, right? Okay, let's start by the theory. You can find out more details about the learning through concept at this book. This book was wrote by Alexandre Magno. Alexandre Magno was the creator and the founder of the Learn 3.0 movement. I really recommend, I strongly recommend you to read this book because you can get more knowledge, more theory, more understandable about the Learn 3.0 idea in general, right? But of course, to help us to understand what the learning through is, we have a kind of set of principles. In this case, this principle is called the learning faster. Okay, it's very similar with the Agile manifest most of the time, right? But with the learning fast, it can summarize what the learning 3.0 is. Look, it's very important to understand this principle because, as I mentioned before, there is no methodology to put the learning to all in practice, right? Because why there is no methodology? Because methodology in general is from the prescriptive world, the 1.0 world, for example. In the Learn 3.0, recognize that there is no rules, there is no prescription, right? Then, of course, we have just a couple of principles to help us in a kind of high idea, right? How we can put the principle, how we can put the concept into practice, right? Okay, I, you can read these principles in more detail later on, right? But I will show briefly for you this concept, these principles. But if you access the Learn3.0 website, you'll find these principles in more detail, right? Let's start by the first one. It's very important that you learn on the real world, okay? The second one, deepen the learning on what is in front of you. Follow. Be the protagonist of your learning. Share is the best way to learn. Optimize your learning of network. Ideas are so important as experience. To visualize the learning is better than measure it. Learn in harmony with your brain. And to complete this principle, we have a kind of flow. It's very important to note that this flow don't represent a kind of methodology, right? It just describes the main behaviors necessary to put in practice the learn through all concept in general. All right, why it's important? Because using the learn through all flow, you understand that most of the time you need to start by some problematizing, right? Because it's very important to understand where you want to reach, right? What's your real problem, for example. And it helps us to understand that in the Learn 3.0 experience or in a Learn 3.0 event in general, you need to connect different point of view, right? You need to research more point of view, especially different point of view, of course, and you need to create some safe environment to put in practice this knowledge. And of course, the sharing is the food to put in practice this concept, this flow itself, right? And all this stuff will be supported by a strong piece of sense making, right? It's very important to deeply understand what this stuff really means, right? That's the reason because the learning through flow is so important to the learning through system in general. Okay. All right, but to put in practice the principles and the flow, for example, we have a few tools actually. Most of these tools are acting as a kind of dog fooding. What it means by dog fooding? Just the starting tools to helping the initial experimentation using Learning 3.0. But you can using other different tools. You can create your own tools, for example, to put in practice the flow and to put in practice the principle, right? Then let's understand a little bit about the learning canvas. The learning canvas is the most famous tool of the Learning 3.0 world. Basically, this canvas put in practice the Learning 3.0 flow because we'll start by a theme, right? A theme describes the problem, the big problem that we want to solve, okay? After that, we'll have some descriptions about the problems or the symptoms of this theme, right? And we'll have different point of views about histories and about ideas. And also to help us to understand the problem solving, we need to understand the expected result, right? It's a kind of future state of the situation, okay? After that, we need to choose some actions to experiment, to put in practice some experimentation around this idea or around these stories, for example. Of course, this canvas has a basic structure, but beyond these structures, it's very important to understand the roles. In this case, we have 3 roles, right? The asker, the facilitator, and the sharer. The asker is the owner of the theme. It means that the asker is a person who has some problem and he wants to solve this problem, right? Then he will get some experience or some ideas from the sharers. The sharers are the people who has some stories, some histories, or some ideas, especially different ideas, to help the asker to get the goal, right? And to organizing this entire process, we have the facilitator. The facilitator is the person who put in practice the Learning 3.0 flow, the people to help the asker and to help the sharer to organize the all knowledge, the all information, the all product of the learner, right? Then that are the main roles using the Learning 3.0 canvas. Okay. Other important element of this learner system is the learn shot. The learn shot is a short-term event to help us to put in practice the Learning 3.0 concept. Why it's important to understand small stuff. Why learn shot? Look, if you, for example, like to take a beer, right? Probably you are familiar with a pint, right? A pint, in this case, represents, for example, a long-term event to get some knowledge, right? But probably you will spend well, a lot of time to consume this pint, right? But if you want deep impact in a short term, probably you go to the bar and you ask for a shot, for example, shot of tequila, right? And probably this shot will create a stronger effect in a short term period of time, right? That's the reason because Alexander named this event as a learn shot. It's an event to create a real and deep learning with deep impact for the participants in general, right? Then let's understand what a learning shot is. Basically, a learning shot is, as I told you, a short-term event to gathering different participants with different point of view, different stories, different ideas around the same themes, for example. Probably we'll put in practice some tool, for example, learning canvas, but you can combine other tools to help to facilitate this process. Uh, for example, it's very common to use visual thinking, to use the word cafe, to use, I don't know, fishbowl, for example, as part of the learning shop. Well,
Well, Learning Shot was awesome. This is the learning canvas we generated. And I had the opportunity to organize all my thoughts on this topic and also to have the contribution of other people so we can sum this up. And I come back home with some tries that I'll do this week. And it was really, really great. I'm so satisfied with it.
I came here expecting to learn about Agile, and I'm going home learning about Agile and about learning as well, about facilitation. I think the in-depth talks along with the facilitation was a perfect combination, quick and objective, very good.
So I came here today and I didn't know what to expect. And then I started talking to people and then it all happened like magic. And sometimes it's not like a single person owns all the experience and all the knowledge, but the knowledge is divided among us all. And this whole experience made me believe that I'm taking back more knowledge than I would have at a conference or something traditional. So it was great. And I believe that I'm learning how to learn again.
Time the learning shot is organized and facilitated by a licensed facilitator, right? It's very important because the learning trail ecosystem is very based on the facilitators community. I will explain it right now. The facilitator community is the gist of the learning trail system in general. It's a kind of keystone, to be honest, because the facilitators, most of the time, will help different people in different places, in different companies, to put in practice the learning trail concept, right? Then it's very important to understand what the facilitation is in this situation, right? I like very much this concept. This concept explains for us what the facilitation is. Facilitation is any activity that make tasks for others easy. It's a simple concept, right? But it tells a lot of the facilitation in general, right? Why facilitation is so important in this situation? If you look, for example, the people, most of the time the people has goals, right? People want to reach some goals, but the people see the path towards the goal with a lot of obstacles, right? The facilitator will help the people to understand these obstacles, and especially when, for example, we have the goal, have the people wants to connect with other people, the facilitator will create some shortcut to reduce this obstacle, to promote the connection between these people, right? Most of the time, you can summarize that the facilitation is about to help people have hard conversation. Or, in other words, facilitation is about to help people to have good conversation about hard subjects, right? It's a very powerful concept behind facilitation in general, right? And by a learning through all perspective, you need to have a good facilitator with excellent facilitation skills, because the hard conversation, in this case, the hard subject, is the learning itself, right? Most of the time, the complex learning for complex environment, for critical environment also, right? Then you really need a good facilitator to working to help in the situation, to promote the learning through all experience in general. Okay? Then other powerful concept around facilitation is this concept. This concept is from the book Collaboration Expanded, and basically this concept, this phrase means that a facilitator owns the process, not the decisions. It's very important, and it's very related with the learning trail concept in general. Do you remember the concept about the product and the process of the learning? So in this case, by a learning through all perspective, the facilitator probably is controlling the process. For example, the facilitator are applying the learning canvas or organizing the time box during some learning shot, for example. But the facilitator have not control about the result of the process, the product in this case, right? For this reason, it's very important to understand that most of the time the facilitator are accepted from the team. You know, the facilitator most of the time there is no engagement or involvement with the same problems that they help to solve for those people, for example. Okay. In other words, you can summarize that as a facilitator, you don't create the art itself, right? You don't need to get knowledge about how to create the art, okay? But you really the only stuff that you really need to put in practice is, as a facilitator, you need to create the conditions when the art will happen, right? Whoa! That's all, folks. It was the basic structure of the learning system of the Learning 3.0. I hope that you enjoy this material, this structure. If you want for more information about Learning 3.0, please access the learning30.co website and keep in touch with the Learning 3.0 community, right? But before I go, I would ask to you one more mission, right? Please self-organize again in pair and discuss what was your main lesson, or your main insight from today. Okay, please sharing among yourself and put in practice this mantra. Sharing is the new teaching, or better, sharing is the new learning. Okay, thanks so much. I hope that you're enjoying. See you next conference and have a nice day. Bye.